All right, it's
Yeah.
11 bells, so let's launch into this.
Yeah. Well, good morning, everybody. This is Dr. Amber Wolf, and I'm here with one of my favorite people in the world, Howard Martin. Hi, Howard.
Hello, Amber. Good to be with you again, and greetings to
Yeah.
everyone who's listening to the program now or in the recorded version. I'm really happy to be with you.
And also Shamir Ladi, who is helping here on the technical end. Hi, Shamir.
Hello, Howard. Hello, Amber, and hello, everyone that's joining us.
So I'm so excited to be interviewing Howard today because I'm just such a fan of HeartMath. And, it's funny how Spirit does these interesting things in our lives. And I just recently broke a bone in my foot, so I had to sit a lot this past week, and I still am, with my feet up and etc. And my world came to a halt, and as I was doing, and it gave me a really wonderful opportunity to go inside and really use the heart math techniques and watch how my body was healing faster and how I was feeling when I did and didn't use the heart math, well, the whole array of techniques. But I want to talk about heart-focused breathing for a minute with you, Howard, and then let's move into a conversation of a heart-focused world. So if you could start little with how this heart math breathing techniques can affect our body physically.
Now, we all know, or many people know, that breathing techniques have been around for thousands of years, and they're very helpful at helping to create a sense of calm and balance in our system. The heart-focused breathing technique takes just a little different direction, and we'll do that together now to set the tone, the energetic pitch. What we wanted to do is to focus your attention in the area in the center of your chest, the area of your heart. You can just feel the energy maybe coming down from the head, descending down in that area. If it's helpful to you, you can put your hand there. And with your focus there, I'd like you to breathe naturally and normally, but breathe deeper than you normally would. And as you breathe deeper, as if your breath is flowing in and out through the area of the heart where you have your focus. And we'll do that together now just for a few breaths. As you do this, what's happening is you're bringing about balance in what's called your autonomic nervous system. That nervous system has an influence on about 90% of every bodily function. You're also improving the communication taking place between our heart and our brain and the rest. The result is that you should be feeling a bit more balanced, a bit more calm, a bit more in touch with yourself. Later in our conversation and program today, we'll take this technique another step. We'll take it further. I'm really busy, developing the HeartMath system, putting that system out into the world. There's so many different ways in which you can communicate in these times. And when you write a book, it's a pretty big commitment. Not only do you have to write the book, there's all the marketing that's associated with it, and there's the commitments to the publishers, and a lot goes on. You have to really, invest in that for the book to have a chance to be successful. And for none of us here, really, of our leaders and authors here at HeartMath, really felt that that was the best thing to use our time for a really long time. We were communicating and reaching people in many different ways. After a while, it became obvious we needed to do a book. So what we decided to do was we decided rather than any one of us writing a book, that 4 key HeartMath people would write the book together.
Great.
That was myself, Dr. Deborah Rosman, the CEO of HeartMath, Dr. Roland McCready, the Director of Research, and Doc Childry himself, the founder of HeartMath. So we wrote the book together, and the first half of the book is really alternating chapters between myself, Deborah, and Roland. It's an overview of HeartMath, kind of where we are today, some information that would be similar if you were familiar with HeartMath before, but certainly not if you were new to it. And then it's an updated view of many of the aspects of HeartMath. The latter part of the book is Doc Childry's chapters, when he's bringing in some new things that he wanted to say and some subjects that he's never written about or publicly shared before. So we put all that together into a book. Now, when we did this, the publisher at first was not really happy.
Yeah.
Because the publisher was saying that, you know, this is not a collaborative book, this is a book, but you have 4 authors. How's that going to work? So as he read the book, he came back very excited, and he said, this book really represents the new way of doing things. He says it's individual expression being conveyed in a collaborative style.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful.
So
yeah.
that's how it happened,
I
and
mean,
we put it out.
That's
Yeah,
great.
we came out with it in February, and it did really well upon release. I think there was a pent-up demand for a HeartMath book, and Amazon has lots of categories, but it went to #1 on 3 different Amazon categories, Amazon.com.
Wow.
And it's still doing well, still doing really well, and it's been a fun project, and one that I do feel represents a way in which we work together to create something special.
Well, I can't wait to get my hands on a copy.
I'll make sure you do, Amber.
Thank you. That's a little hint. Well, and so in that collaborative effort, I think we're talking really about our world today, is that even though we may have our family all across the globe, we have ways to contact each other and be with each other just like we are. You're in California, Shamir's in Calgary, and I'm here in Colorado. Wow, C, and C. And here we are creating something together, a collaborative effort, because it's something we believe in. So step me from that into social coherence and how the collaborative effort of what people are saying we want today in creating a society that is heart-based.
Well, first of all, let me say that what we mean by coherence at HeartMath is really order and harmony. And that can happen, and we measure this really at the physiological level, right inside our own bodies. It extends out into our social environment, which is what the social coherence part of the book that I wrote was about, and all the way into global coherence, you know, more energetically connected world. And in the social coherence piece, the reason that I wanted to write that chapter, there were 2 reasons. One is that I wanted to show some of the really good things that are happening in the world. The world today we see often through the lens of all the problems. And it is obvious that we're living in extremely challenging times, and we are in fact experiencing polarization in many ways like never before. Yes. So all that's on full display. I mean, that's obvious. We see that. That's on the world stage. But underneath that, there are so many amazing things that are taking place. And a new world, in my opinion, and I state this all the time, Amber, is a new world is emerging right in the midst of the old one. A new and very different world, a world that does cooperate more, that does operate more harmoniously. And that's what social coherence indicates. So how do you make that real? How do you start showing that this is actually happening? So that was the first reason I wanted to write the chapter. The second reason is I wanted to inspire people to see that there is a new world emerging and to see that we are moving in the right direction, and to get a vision of that, to get a picture of that for themselves about where this is actually going to end up, where we're moving as a global society. And that was the impetus behind writing a chapter about something like social coherence. As you know, and as many of the listeners may know, some may not, science has always been a part of HeartMath. And so we've done a tremendous amount of work in the scientific arena, especially biomedical research, understanding heart-brain-body connections, understanding coherence, a lot of research done in that area. And Shamir and I, who was the host on our last program, talked about some of that. But we've also done a lot of social science research, looking at the changes that occur when HeartMath trainings take place, for example, in large populations. And so in the social coherence part of that book, I wanted to express some of that. I wanted to show some of that so that people could get a sense of what's possible for them. Not so much to hype HeartMath or HeartMath training, but to show the effects that can occur when people begin to operate more from a heart-centric place, and when that is done on a collective level, like within organizations.
That's beautiful, and we need some of that good news. I love what you said about that this new, beautiful new world is emerging from almost the ashes of the old world, and it's happening while the other stuff is happening. And so that's really good news, and I look forward to hearing some more about that.
Well, I'm certainly going to talk more about that when we do a live event together next year. But
Yeah,
what
yeah.
I do see is, as I travel around the world, and I know you do as well, is that there are so many amazing people out there. There are hundreds and hundreds of millions of people on our planet right now operating in a different way. They have gone through a transitional process. They are thinking differently. They are acting differently. Their values are different. What they want is different, and they are reaching out to create something new. And that's part of the good news that I really want to share with people. We are connected, and things are moving on. Believe me, it's headed in the right direction.
Yay, yay. We all need that. We need the good news channel, right?
And we have people from around the world on our call today. I've seen people popping in where they're
Yeah,
from, in Australia and
yeah.
Germany, different places. So we are, in fact, connecting together on a global level as we speak, as you and I speak now.
And it's so powerful. It's just you don't even have to, see another person to be able to feel that and visualize that, there are these people and we're connected on this beautiful heart grid all around the planet. And that gives me so much hope. And I know that these are the things that are shifting the consciousness and shifting the energetics of the world. Can you talk a little bit about how HeartMath actually sees the science of the energy of the world shifting?
Well, we look at it, you have to look at it in pieces, I think. You have to look at it in smaller chunks. You can see a bigger picture, and that's interesting to talk about, and that can be inspirational. But then what does that really mean? I mean, many people sense a positive momentum in the world, and they see changes occurring. And as we begin to focus more on that, Amber, I think we begin to draw more pictures to ourselves. For example, for me, cut on a TV show and there'll be something amazing that's going on in another part of the world that I didn't know about. That kind of a
Yeah.
magnetic draw happens. Just reinforcing some of the beliefs that I have. But from a research standpoint, which is not the only way to look at things, but from a research standpoint, to especially get more understanding and more belief from mainstream society, we use social science research, and we often use a very sophisticated psychometric survey developed by HeartMath researchers and researchers from the Naval Postgraduate School. And it's a very large questionnaire. It's fully scientifically vetted. It's been used for years to measure changes that are occurring in a variety of aspects from people who have been trained in HeartMath pre and post training. So what the viewers and listeners now are seeing on their screen, if you're on your computer, you can see, as we're looking at some data from a study, one of our first very large studies, actually done many years ago, actually done in the late 90s. This was before we even had our technology, Amber, to assist in the process.
Wow.
And we were training people in a HeartMath training program, a one-day training program. And the data that you're seeing here is taken from companies, from 5 different companies. Some of the companies were in the United States, some were in Europe. They were very large multinational corporations. And so the data that you see presented here is taken from actually 5,692 participants. And so what we did is we were getting them to take the survey before they were trained. They went through the training program, and they were encouraged to practice what they had learned. And then 6 weeks later, we came back and we got them to take the survey again. So what you're seeing, for example, is interesting. We're seeing that before they took their training program, 43% of these people said that they were tired often or most of the time. That dropped down to 24% 6 weeks later. Now, here's something interesting about that. I mean, if you look at the next one, too, exhausted. 29% of these people said they were exhausted. It went down to 14% 6 weeks later. You see it going across. It's amazing. And one of the things that was shocking to me about it, Amber, when I saw this data for the first time was, you mean we have like 43% of our workforces showing up tired before they even get there?
Yeah, yeah.
What does that mean to productivity?
Yeah.
So then the other graphs you're seeing there are around things like their psychological state, around their level of depression. 10% were depressed. It went down to 4%. 23% were anxious, down to 11%. So you see these major shifts occurring over a large population of people that were in different countries working in different kind of companies. Some were high-tech companies, some were financial companies, and so this was a pretty amazing study. Now I think there's another slide. I don't know if the next slide is on that one as well. Yeah, this is from the same study. This is on physical symptoms. Now it gets down to the body. 36% of these people in this big study said that they were their sleep was inadequate. That went down to 24. And that's a major deal for people. Sleep's a big problem.
Well, yeah.
People feeling the body aches, which I certainly have them, and many people do. 32% down to 18. And this is the question answer was often or most of the time. So you see across there, muscle tension and headaches and a lot of things were improving post-training. Here's where it gets interesting, and I reported on this in the book, is as we began to go back and talk to some of the people that we were involved in these programs at those companies, like let's say the HR people or the people involved as the training managers, those kind of folks, they would tell us, yeah, only about a third of the people that were trained are actually doing what you asked them to do.
Wow.
They're actually practicing the techniques. Now, what does that say? That says that, wait a minute, even though 2/3 of these people weren't really practicing what they'd learned sincerely, there was some effect happening in the energetic field environment in that organization.
Wow.
That was affecting the whole.
So a third of them affected the other 2/3. Wow.
And it implies that. And you just can't definitively say it, but why would this data change across the board if these people are going, yeah, every now and then I might do a little heart-focused breathing, but they really weren't doing HeartMath techniques like heart lock-ins and freeze frame and things like that. A third were, 2/3 weren't. But yet across the large population, we were seeing these huge statistical changes. And it blew me away because, again, it wasn't based upon, well, this is just happening in the banking industry. This is just happening in high-tech companies. Or this only happens in the United States, that kind of thing.
Or it only happens if you do the techniques.
Exactly. So that was cool. That was the coolest part of all this. And this was, again, back in the late 90s. And so that was a real eye-opener for the power of the heart, not just HeartMath training programs, but when we were getting people in touch, in very pragmatic ways, but getting people in touch with something that they already had inside in the first place, their core authentic self, changes could occur really quickly, and they were occurring across large populations.
Wow, that's amazing. And so I know that there are some more slides about this, but I have a little question if we.
Sure.
But you tell, I wanted to ask you, the physical things that are happening when those people, why is it that they started to feel better? Is it from the breathing? What did that cause their body to do?
Well, when you
that made that overall healing?
Yeah, well, the breathing's part of it, and of course, as we'll do a little bit later, the activation of the positive emotion. The power of positive emotion cannot be underestimated. And when I call it positive, I mean regenerative emotions. When we're feeling more appreciative about things, when we're feeling more caring towards others without the weight of worry and concern that we call overcare at HeartMath, when we're having more compassion rather than judgment, when those things become sort of natural and normal, when there's less judgment, more compassion, when there's more care and less worry, when there's more appreciation rather than complaining, when those things weave themselves into the fabric of our lives, it changes things going on inside our body. Hormonal releases, for example, begin to change. We produce less cortisol, which is a stress hormone. We produce more DHEA, which is a vitality hormone. Changes occur in our nervous system. That autonomic nervous system that I mentioned when we were doing our heart-focused breathing, the synchronization in that nervous system improves. That sends signals to the brain and through the rest of the body that begin to create changes even in the neural pathways that are operating inside our brain. That can lead to, not always, but that can lead to things like, well, I'm sleeping better now. I have less headaches. There can be a physical relationship to the inner attitudes. And I think for many people involved in personal growth practices, people get it, that what's happening in our thoughts and our feelings is just affecting our bodies. And so when we begin to change even our emotional topography, so to speak, begin to operate more from a positive emotional standpoint, we will see very often beneficial effects occurring right down to the biology and to the physical body.
So if we are stressed out and worried, and having that kind of a day, and by bedtime we're exhausted, and we either go to bed and can't fall asleep, and that exhaustion just kind of builds, or we go to bed, we crash and burn for a few hours, and then we're up again in that exhaustion pattern. That's all cortisol, isn't it?
Well, cortisol is one of the factors. Yeah, cortisol
Yeah.
is a hormone in the body that's too much. Cortisol is not healthy. Cortisol is there for a reason. It is actually the hormone that wakes us up in the morning. So it
Oh.
isn't that we don't want any cortisol. I mean, it's about hormonal relationships and balances. But too much cortisol is one of the factors. When you have, I'm going to mention the autonomic nervous system again. It has two branches. Sympathetic speed things up, parasympathetic slows things down. When we're running around racing through the day, dealing with one stressful situation after another, that sympathetic part of our autonomic nervous system becomes highly active. It becomes dominant. It takes over. And then even when we try to calm down or try to be more peaceful or try to go to sleep, that nervous system is still jacked up.
Yeah.
It causes the release of cortisol, and that adds a hormonal component to that. And very often we simply can't sleep or sleep well. This is a major issue, and it's getting to be more of an issue.
Mm-hmm.
Again, hundreds of millions of people today are having problems with sleep. So if anyone's listening right now and you're having a problem with that, one thing you can take comfort in is you're not alone. A lot of
Yeah.
people are experiencing it. And there are ways that you can find a more peaceful place in yourself. Certainly you can learn to create more synchronization in that nervous system. You can use HeartMath techniques. You can use meditation techniques that you already do that work for you. Our technology certainly is a great assistive tool. We even have a little booklet that you can purchase with their inner balance trainer. It's called Solving Sleeplessness. And it shows you how to use the technology to help create better sleep patterns. These are just ways we try to help, and we try to help Amber and society in areas where we know there are significant issues and problems that we think we can help with. Sleeplessness would just be one of many, but it's certainly one that a lot of people are going through right now.
Well, and looking at that graph and seeing that what a high percentage of people show up to their job every day not rested, I mean,
Yeah.
that's a domino effect into, that part of their life, the rest of their life, and how
Yep.
their work life interfaces with other companies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's shocking. That's a third of the population.
It is, and it's like, it says a lot about how we're living our lives, and certainly, let's just look at it from a company or a business standpoint. If you have a company that's trying to be innovative, that's trying to maintain resilience, that's trying to, have good communication internally, all the things that great companies want to do, and half your people are showing up for work tired, and 38% of them are showing up exhausted.
Yeah, yeah.
That's how much can you move forward, really? This is another study. It's actually another one with 5 global companies, 1,400 people. This is showing the similar results. On this graph, you're seeing pre-training, you're seeing post-training 6 weeks later, and then the coolest thing about these graphs is 6 months later. In other words, the effects were sustained. They didn't just
Wow.
poof go away. You can see that, like, let's
Right.
use the tired graph. 49% were tired often and most of the time. It went down to 31% were tired often and most of the time. 6 months later, it was still at 32%. And you see that reflected across the data that's there.
Yeah, that's the very good news. Wow. Wow. So how do you see that knowledge helping our businesses and the model of business that we're heading towards in 2017? Do you see any changes there?
Yeah, business is changing because it has to change. Certainly business is still business, and bottom line is still bottom line, and those basic principles are there. But businesses today are disappearing really quickly if they don't remain resilient and innovative. It's interesting, too, one of the things that I'll talk about when we have our event in Colorado next year is I'm going to talk about disruption being the constant.
Yeah.
Everything is in a state of disruption, and business is a great example of that. If you think about businesses that no longer exist that existed 5 years ago,
Yeah.
think about the video rental business.
Yeah, they're gone, right?
Where's Blockbuster? You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
if you think about even the book business, you know,
Yeah. Bookstores, right?
where are the big bookstores? Where there's no more Borders books.
Hmm.
Um, if you think about cars, where's what happened to the Hummer?
Yeah, that thing disappeared,
Retailers.
thankfully.
Big retailers are like facing extinction.
Yeah. Yeah.
J.C. Penney is always on the edge. So is Sears.
Yeah.
The world is changing and business is changing rather dramatically. There are new businesses coming into play that work on very different principles. The classic example is Uber.
Mm-hmm.
Uber is a company that's worth billions of dollars. That's grown in an unprecedentedly fast. I mean, you can't even put it into context. And yet it owns no cars, but it's a transportation company. And so
Right.
part of what's happening in society is we're moving from being a society that desires to own things, and we're moving instead into a society that desires to access things.
Mm.
So
Mm.
we access transportation through Uber without owning anything.
Right.
And so these business models are changing. So to answer your question more poignantly, how do we keep up with that? How does the company maintain that? We face that at HeartMath. How do we continue to be innovative? What do we need to be doing new and different? And companies need to ask themselves this question all the time. Now, when you can take new understandings and integrate them at the highest level of executive organization, that's when change happens. And so
Mm-hmm.
engendering more intuition, engendering more balanced understanding of things, more of a wholeness view are things that we try to do when we work with businesses. And what I'm seeing is that many businesses today, the leaders in those businesses, are really trying to do these things. I know that business, especially big business, often gets characterized as being evil in some way because of
Mm-hmm.
business practices, because of exploitation of people and the planet. I'm not denying that that doesn't happen and exist. My own personal interactions with business leaders is I found these to be really good, intelligent men and women. They are working within systems that are very difficult to change overnight, but the intention to do things differently is there. I will give you one quick story. I was in a meeting, I guess it's been almost 3 years ago now, Transformational Leadership Council, which I'm a member of. We did a different event where we brought in leaders from major corporations and we spent a weekend with them, and they were paired with us. We were mentoring each other. They were mentoring us on business. We were mentoring them on, on their growth. The guy I was paired with, I won't mention the company, but the guy I was paired with was the CEO of the company, the largest manufacturer of French fries in the world.
Wow. Okay.
It's a company worth several $billion. If you go into
Okay.
McDonald's, and that's, for people that eat those things, it's fine. I'm not judging food, but if you go into McDonald's and eat a McDonald's French fry or something, it's their company that put it in there.
Okay.
It's that big. So they make a huge amount of French fries. Well, I worked with this guy, and I found him to be really a good man, a really nice man. And we got down to the very end, and I asked him, it was part of our exercise, what was the most meaningful thing that you got out of our time together? And he said to me, he said, I realized that my company has to have a better purpose,
Wow.
that we really have to have a better purpose, that being the largest manufacturer and biggest company in the French fry business is not enough, that there must be something more to this, and that I need to find a way to find our company's purpose and to get that purpose brought to the forefront of what we do.
Oh, that's beautiful. Wow.
So that's an example of changes in business. In the book, I wrote a chapter, some things in a chapter on that. One of the things that I highlighted, and this was a tricky one. I had to go through some editing on this one because of people's concern about business. But I said, look at advertising today. A lot of the ads that I see now are showing people being happy. They're showing people taking care of one another. They're showing some love being exchanged. They're showing cooperation and harmony. And major, gigantic corporations are running these ads. Now, I'm not endorsing the companies or their products. And I'm not saying that their motive in doing these ads is always a good motive. But here's the point I make about those ads. If you look at how advertising at that level is done, first of all, an ad campaign is designed around what they think people are going to respond to. They're trying to sense what is the public appetite, so to speak. Then a huge amount of money goes into creating those ads and testing them. And then even more, hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars are spent airing those ads. So if they're airing an ad about caring for someone, about cooperating, about showing some love, if they're airing those kind of ads to sell their product, what they've determined is that is what people are going to respond to.
Right, right.
So their motive may not be clean. It may be to sell some product that's not good for people.
Right.
But what they're picking up on is that's what we want.
Right.
And so that's saying something right there. If you can flip that around, if everybody listening can sort of turn that into saying, well, if they're able to determine that, that means that the planet is actually pulling for that.
That's what's happening. Yeah. Otherwise, they would go in a different direction.
That's right. They would go in a different direction.
Yeah. That's such a good point. My pet peeve are the pharmaceutical ads that, and if I ever I'm around a TV that's on and they're on, and you can hear the sound, you see all those people, they're, together, they're having a picnic, it's a beautiful day, and if you take this, it'll get rid of your symptoms, but you might die. So I see what you're saying, and it didn't used to be that way. It used to be a doctor and a patient. The doctor was on the other side of the desk, handing a prescription to a patient. So isn't that that's fascinating how that's shifting.
Start looking at ads like with companies and like Coke, for example.
Yeah.
And the imagery and the messaging in those ads they put out. Now, I'm not endorsing Coke. That's why it was tricky when I wrote the book. I didn't want it to appear as if I was for Coke or for any of that. I personally don't drink Coke, but it was about what they're doing to sell their product. And some of these ads for Coke, they get really right on down into people really just giving to one another.
Right. Interesting.
Sharing with one another.
Interesting.
And so it sets a draw for it. Yeah.
So if indeed cooperation is the new model or part of the new model, as the smartest minds in the world are on it, selling their products, how can we in our everyday life, and I'm wondering even if we look at it with our own inner cooperation with ourselves and ourselves, and how we can tune into a more cooperative model. Like when I fell down and broke my foot, I was obviously way out of cooperation with my paradigm of what I should have been doing. I wasn't listening to something. So if we take that personally, really take that inter-cooperation personally, and each one of us is doing that, and it goes out into the world, and that 2/3, 1/3 of the people are doing it, and 2/3 are being affected. Can we make that shift but we have to do it starting with us.
Well, we can and we are, and I'm glad you took our conversation, Amber, in this direction, because, we can show lots of data and show the results and all that, and that's important. It provides an empirical understanding and a groundedness to it all. But that's not why I do what I do, and that's not why you and Shamir do what you do. As I think we're trying to facilitate people to become the very best they can possibly be, and then to work together to usher in and accelerate the unfoldment of this new and different world. So that's why I do interviews. That's why I love to do the live events. That's why I'm looking forward to the one we're going to do in next year in Denver. It's when people get together, they begin to cooperate in a different way. There's an energetic transfer that occurs. It's occurring now through what we're doing through the webinar structure. It amplifies itself when we're in physical contact, when we're in the same place, the same space, the same room. And it does start with us individually, overcoming our own inner conflicts. We can't give what we don't have, and we can't just brush over the things that are there. So we need tools and techniques and things like that, whether it's HeartMath or other methods, to make contact with that part of ourselves, to have the internal discrimination to see what we need to do, what we need to change, and then the courage and the power to do it. To me, the heart's our best friend to get that job done. It relates to everything I just said. The intuition, the courage, the power to do, it's all related to heart. And
Yeah.
so it starts there, and we begin to work on ourselves day to day. Every day in my life, I'm trying to be a better Howard Martin than I was the day before. And to keep that progression going is a process of continuous growth. Now, that leads to the cooperation that happens through our social interactions. It begins with our loved ones. It begins with our families. It extends into our workplaces. It goes into our communities, into our friendships, into the groups and social organizations we're involved in. As that begins to amplify, it actually begins to create an energetic field environment in the planetary consciousness field that begins to create global coherence. That's when you have big systemic changes occurring. That's when you have large numbers of people operating in similar ways. That's when you see movements of various things happening all around the world. That's what social coherence leads to. It leads to global coherence. So why I do what I do is I want to engender global coherence. I want that to be, the end game. To get that job done, I have to focus first on me. Then I feel like I need to do what I can to help other people, make their own changes, and then take that into larger settings, in the social coherence settings, like live events and things that I do. But ultimately what I want is the world to be operating in a more synchronized, coherent, harmonious way, and that would be reflective of global coherence. So it's definitely happening in the data that we've done at HeartMath, and there's other organizations too that are doing amazing things and producing data as well, are showing that it is actually unfolding. Now, we have more to do, and we are in a very tricky spot right now because the world is some tenuous things are happening, and it is in a polarized position. You see it so clearly reflected. I don't want our interview to be so much about what just took place in the U.S. elections, but I will mention that was a great example of polarization.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where you had two different camps and two different whole world views that were, colliding through the electoral process. So that's happening in a lot of places. And so we do need to put out more heart. We do need to put out more care. I think we all need to aspire to take our own next steps in our own personal growth, and then to share whatever it is we gain. To me, there are two aspects to what I try to get people to do. I get them to practice, and I get them to share. Practice what you know. Practice the things that have worked for you. Put more heart into them. Make a more concerted effort to actualize the things you know inside, and then reach out, share with other people. The sharing component's got to be there. It can't just be about us and our growth. If I wanted to just grow and it was only about me, maybe I'd go off into the woods somewhere and get a cabin.
And life would be simple.
Yeah, life would be simple, but that's not, it doesn't feel
But
like
it'd be just you. Yeah.
it doesn't feel complete. It has to be shared. And so that's what I'm encouraging people to do. And that's why I'm enjoying this conversation and why I enjoy doing the kind of things that I get to do.
Well, and I love that these techniques really are so simple and so accessible. And, every time I travel with Lee Carroll and I'm asked to come on stage and lead a meditation, we're doing heart-focused breathing. Now, I don't call it HeartMath. I don't advertise HeartMath, but I bring it into the heart. And if people like that and they start asking me, then I get to tell them this. And it's really, for me, it's being part of the solution. And I love that it's so accessible that I like having the little tools to watch the little monitor and that kind of stuff. But you don't have to have that. You don't have to have anything. You don't have to have any different clothes. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to anything. It's basic, simple, anybody can do it, and you can do it anytime, anywhere. I mean, if I'm in my head when I'm trying to fall asleep at night, I just start doing heart-focused breathing, and the next thing I know, it's 7.5 hours later, and I'm waking up feeling really good. So for me, that it's a practical, simple tool, and you can give it away and give it away and teach it and give it away, and It's simple and beautiful, and I love your YouTube videos where you talk about this. So, people that want more of you and learn more about this, they can go there and see you in action, see you with your TED Talks and
Yeah,
all of those things. I wanted to ask you, because I'm watching the clock and the time is ticking away. Um, in industry, I'm just so fascinated. Earlier you said something about the Navy. You were doing tests with the Navy, and that just boggles my mind that the U.S. military would want anything to do with this. And, that's a bias on my part. So I
sure.
was really happy to hear that. And what other kind of industries have jumped on the HeartMath bandwagon?
Well, a number of them really. The area, Amber, today that we do probably 90% of our work and training in is actually healthcare.
Wow. Okay.
We have about 30 to 40,000 health professionals alone. Just that one segment of our database is health professionals, and it's health professionals that have been trained in HeartMath in some way and/or are using our techniques and our inner balance trainer or M-Wave technologies. So that's one area. The other area is actually healthcare institutions, and one of the primary parts of those institutions is hospitals.
Wow.
So we train in hospitals, and we primarily train the nurses. And we've done a lot of work in hospitals, and we've had amazing results in the hospital environment over these years. And so, I mean, I'm blown away a lot at times. I do what I do here at HeartMath, and then I step back and look at what other people here are doing, and sometimes it
Mm-hmm.
just blows me away because it gets kind of casual now, to be honest, 25 years later. It's not like these things are neonized, like I hear about them after they've been done or something at lunch. But like
Right,
just last
right.
week, we had just last week, for example, we had some of our people were in San Diego working with Navy SEALs.
Wow.
Uh,
Okay.
Another group was at Dartmouth, working at Dartmouth Medical Center doing training. And I'm going, look at what's happening here. Look
Wow, that's saying
at where we are
something.
in the world. And this is just like in one week, and it's not like it's a big announcement being made. I'm hearing about this at lunch. Well, where's Robert today? He's in Dartmouth. Really?
Yeah.
I don't think they'd let
Yeah.
me on the campus. They'd call security if I showed up over there.
That's why they sent him.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I can send him. But yeah, it's fun things like that. But hospitals have been great. We sort of backed into the hospital thing, and back again in the late 90s, we started working with a hospital that was having a lot of problems. They were up in the Chicago area, and they had the biggest problem they were having was retention issues. They were losing
Yeah.
28% of their workforce every year.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so they brought us in. We trained their hospital educators. They began to do training in the organization. They trained maybe about a third of the staff in that one year, and the percentage of people leaving the organization went from 28 down to 21, a 7% difference.
Wow.
And when they did the math on it, we didn't even ask them to do it. We weren't that smart back then. But when they did the math on it, it came out that whatever they'd paid us to do the training versus the cost savings they've had on not having to replace those people ended up, they made an additional $800,000.
Oh my gosh. Well, that says something, doesn't it?
So we figured
Phew.
we better maybe take a look at doing this other places.
Yeah.
So that's how we
Well,
kind
what
of back.
about,
And I said,
well, I was just going to say about schools, about kids, because, the pressure on kids today, there's so much more that they need to know and learn and faster and, colleges and, they're thinking about colleges when they're 10 years old and, how to cope with that and how to stay out of, negative social situations and low
yeah,
self-esteem and all of that.
we've done a lot of work there in children, as and Shamir knows. Actually, what's interesting is go back in history, back 25 years ago, the first book produced here at HeartMath was written by Doc Childry, and he wrote a book for teenagers. That was his first book.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yep, it's called a How-To Guide to Teen Self-Discovery. And
Huh.
that was his first book. Now, we've had an interest in children and in education for years. It's done through the nonprofit part of HeartMath. It's the
Uh-huh.
HeartMath Institute. And those people have worked tirelessly, and it's been a hard job. Uh,
Mhm.
Educational systems are hard to change, hard to penetrate. There's usually no money there. They have had a sincere desire all these years to do great work with kids. There are literally thousands of schools where there are teachers or administrators in their schools that use HeartMath in some form. We did a large study. You can see it on your screen now. This was back when there was something called the Omnibus Bill that was passed every year, and it was lots of small funding for various projects. We were funded with $1 million grant. A bipartisan-sponsored bill gave us $1 million to do a study in schools. The study was designed to show the relationship between test-taking anxiety and academic performance. What we determined through other studies is that kids could study, and they would put their time and energy into it, and they would have the answers inside. But when they started to take the tests, the anxiety over performing would overtake them. And then they would have what's called cortical inhibition. They could not remember what they knew. So we did a large study in school systems around the country, and we were looking at physiological measurements. We were looking at test-taking anxiety. We were looking at academic performance. And so what you're seeing here is you're looking at some heart rate variability data, which we won't try to explain today. But on the right-hand side of this graph, you can see that their test-taking anxiety went down a lot.
Yeah.
As it did, look at what happened with their English language arts academic performance. It went up.
Wow, look at that. Okay, so they could access the things that they had studied and knew.
And what was actually even better about all this is there was other great data that came back showing improvements in social emotional behavior. Because we know that kids are going through a lot. Schools can even be dangerous places to be, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Relationships with peers, relationships with teachers, and all that improved in the same study. But that's the good news, and this is where things will go. We've still got some road to walk, which is why I said earlier that we need to come together. We do need to work together to create this new world, because even with this data, we were not able to take that forward and just have it rolled out across school systems everywhere. The systems just couldn't handle that right now.
Yet, yeah.
I will say this as well. When I read it, stood out to me was endemic of the challenges that we face that we still need to work towards solving. It's one of the bigger problems they have at implementing this study, even though it was being paid for by the government, was compliance by the teachers.
Oh my gosh, that's interesting.
Because they feel like they don't have time.
Yeah, they're overloaded, overwhelmed.
I got to do this thing where I'm teaching kids, you know, studies, and have to get these tests done, get the test results back to these people in California. Yep, that's what you got to do. It looked like work to them.
Yeah.
And they're already stressed out.
Right.
So these are the challenges we face. Now, the good news is you can see what can happen when you see a study like this. You can see from this study we can help our children by teaching them about their emotions and teaching them simple heart-centric techniques to use to access an amazing power they have within themselves. We can do that. We've shown that we can do it. And now society and the sort of the overall tone and energetic pitch in our consciousness, as it keeps elevating, more interest, more acceptance, more of that's going to come in, and more things like this can happen all around the world.
Oh, that's so encouraging, because I know it starts with our children. So that's, wow, that's great. Great to know. Howard, how about if you guide us in one of these wonderful techniques? Would you mind doing that?
Yeah, we've had a lot of information being presented here, so let's just slow it all down for a minute or two. And let's make connection with our own hearts. And then we're going to make a connection between each other, and then we're going to send that to the world. That's what I'd like everybody to do now.
Beautiful.
So what I'd like folks to do is just focus your attention now in the area of the heart, just like we did before. Now breathe deeply. And imagine your breath is flowing in and out through the area of the heart. Now I'd like you to access and feel a regenerative, heart-based emotion. It could be just feeling appreciation for life itself, for the good things in your life, and for the gift of life. It could be a feeling of care, love for someone or something in your life, a person, a place, a pet. Whatever your heart guides you to now, just feel as best you can that regenerative heart-based emotion as you continue to breathe as if the breath is flowing in and out through the area of the heart. A new heart-based world is emerging, but it can always use more heart. So what I want you to do now is to gently radiate whatever you're feeling, that feeling inside your own heart, radiate it outward into space. Connect with each other, with all of us participating in this program now or in its recorded forms. Now send it out to humanity for it to be used in the ways that are best for the whole. Make this your heart gift to humanity. Okay, thank you everybody for doing that and taking a little of our valuable time together to do a little service and make a contribution to others.
That's beautiful, Howard. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, felt good to me.
Yeah. You know, in my, people are saying thank you. Yeah, that's lovely. I just feel so hopeful and grateful. I have a great fullness in my heart and in my being that you're doing what you do and the whole HeartMath world is doing it and the people are being trained and that all of us that have hearts can make a difference.
Yeah, I agree. Take care everybody. Enjoy your day, enjoy your life, and I'll be back together again soon. Bye-bye now.
All right. Bye, Howard. Thank you.